Hello and welcome to Happy Times and Places, a positively inclined Doctor Who episode commentary podcast in which I, Toby Hadoke, get a friend to choose a Doctor Who story and secretly nominate their favourite things about it. I have to watch, commentate along and see if I can guess what those favourite things are.
Hi Toby, thanks for inviting me to this podcast. I am very honoured to be here talking about one of my favourite stories of all time. When Toby first emailed me, the first thought came to my mind was I want to do the Romans, and I was so happy no one had done it yet. For episode 1, I have chosen a scene, and for episodes 2, 3 and 4, I have chosen dialogue. So good luck, Toby.
Well, hello everybody. I'm about to let you in on a conspiracy, which is the title of episode 3 of The Romans. I'm in two minds about this. Josh Snares, who you heard introducing their choice of story to conjure for Happy Times and Places, has let me know that he chose a scene for episode 1, lines of dialogue for episodes 2, 3 and 4, and a scene for their overall thing. And I chose Derek Francis as Nero last week just because I wanted to acknowledge him. But should I take this seriously? There's still a chance if I get this week's line, next week's line, and the scene, which I have an inkling of what it might be, but I could be totally wrong. Just because I like the scene, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an obvious standout. And it's in this episode, so I will be talking about it. Do I go for that, or do I do my sort of anal mind thing of going, no, I have to make sure the things that I want to acknowledge get acknowledged. Otherwise, they will not be etched in history, which I'm aware is ridiculous. But anyway, let's see. The description on BritBox says, Poppaea plans to poison Barbara, who has become the object of Nero's affections. Yes, indeed. So there's a lot to digest here, but try not to do it with the poison that's being thrown about as we eavesdrop on a conspiracy in 3, 2, 1. So here we are. It's quite a long episode, this one. It's over the 25. It's 26 minutes and a little bit long, so one of the longer episodes of Doctor Who. And I remember being daunted by that, because I think for the commentary we'd had Nick Evans and Barry Jackson in part 1, and then we lost Nick at the end of part 1, and then we lost Barry just into part 2, and then episode 3. So I'd already done a couple of episodes. It was just Ray Cusick, Christopher Barry, and William Russell remaining. I'd got fewer people for the longer track, but what's a minute and a half amongst friends. So yes, that's the stock footage of the lions, and here we are now in the. I like this opening shot. I'm presuming that BBC had lots of these sort of pillars and things, to call upon. That's the great thing when you have a that's very funny. Poor old Tigellinus, who I adore. We will talk about Tigellinus. When you have a corporation that has, places to store scenery and the ability to reuse stuff, it's a great use of the nation's artistic resources. And now that the BBC is not a programme maker really anymore and doesn't have that infrastructure, I think we lose out. I think we also lose out on the fact that you had, artisans, you had makers, you had designers, you had people under contract who learnt their trade, and through that learning and education poured that back into the artistic endeavour and output of the country, and even if people then left the corporation, they went into movies, and that's why we've punched above our weight in terms of television and movie production over quite a long period of time. So I'm sad we don't have that infrastructure. We still make great telly and great movies, but I certainly think it was no accident that having a program making hub that had resources that could be marshalled and could be used economically, because the cost was amortized over years and different productions and blah blah blah, is a helpful thing, which is why the BBC has always been sort of renowned for being very good at costume drama, because it had such a history and experience and resources to pull them off. And of course, Doctor Who decides to go, well, we'll do a costume drama and we'll be daft. Look at the perspective in that corridor. It's obviously not that long, but it's a cheat with a little bit of stuff at the end. So there's lots to talk about here. Derek Francis is great. Tigellinus, I think he's credited in this episode. He's just Tigellinus last episode, but I'm sure... Oh, boom! I saw a boom come into shot. I'm sure he's credited as Tigellinus, open brackets, cupbearer, close brackets. He is played by Brian Proudfoot, who is, I think, giving a wonderful comic turn here. And it's his only credit in Doctor Who, even though he returns in The Chase, where his paperwork credit is Walk On Iridian, i.e. he's an Iridian. I think he gets exterminated, who has no dialogue or anything like that, but he's killed, but he's a non-speaking supporting artiste. And he's also, more important than that, he is Doctor Who. He is the first person, I think, to double for William Hartnell. He is the guy that wanders through the poplar trees and across the fields in the Reign of Terror for those filmed sequences to show the Doctor travelling through France when William Hartnell was not going to go all the way onto location to achieve those. So Brian is the first person to play Doctor Who isn't the actor playing Doctor Who. I'm pretty certain there's nobody else in any other episodes prior to that. No, that's right. And here we have Tavius having Barbara. I was very pleased to see in the BBC's internal report that Jacqueline Hill's performance was complimented by Kenneth Adam, big BBC boss guy, for episode 2, because she is excellent. Of course, part of this thing is I see Ian and Barbara as kind of mum and dad a bit. You know, they were the older companions. They were companions before I was born. And of course, Jacqueline Hill here is younger than I am now, but I still look at her, and she's beautiful. And I'm not saying she looks older than she actually is, because she doesn't. But she will always be older to me because Barbara is older than me, and considerably older than me in terms of, you know, when you're a youngster watching these programs, most of the companions are a bit closer to your age. But, you know, Ian and Barbara were grown-ups. They were teachers as well. So I will never, even though this woman I'm looking at is, 14 years, probably 14 years, younger than I am now, she's still a maternal figure to me. That she's stunningly beautiful. I think she's an excellent actress. I love Jacqueline Hill. I never had the pleasure. I have been to the house that she lived in when she was doing Doctor Who, because her husband, Alvin Rakoff, still lives there, and I had the pleasure of visiting him a few short years ago. Beautiful house that they have. And she was, of course, lived near the Brierses. She was best mates with Richard Brier's wife, Anne Davis, who passed away this year, sadly, last year just gone. Now, this gets very silly now, the Romans, and I love it. I mean, the serious mind, I have heard people going, oh yeah, but he's trying to sexually assault Barbara. There's nothing funny about that. I mean, it's obviously ridiculous. I don't think it's trying to make light of sexual assault. It's a farce. It's a form of comedy. Sexual assault is something I take very seriously and would always roundly condemn, but also think in a ridiculous heightened situation, just in the same way as you can be funny about death, as we will be later on. I think death is a terrible tragedy. I take it very seriously. I write obituaries. I don't have a sense of humour. When somebody dies, I'm not one of those people to make jokes about it. I think that's quite disrespectful. But you can still have a funny death scene if you're in a heightened farcical construct. But yes, you could equally be very serious if you want to go, but actually making light of sexual assault is actually very bad. And you go, yes, it is, but context is all. And I don't think anything that happens here would in any way increase the likelihood of sexual assault on anybody. But then again, I'm not somebody that's ever been sexually assaulted. There might be people watching this who've had a bad experience who might be triggered by it. So who am I to comment? It's a very tricky area. But I am able to, leave any real world concerns I may have about such things at the door and go, this is daft and silly and we're not supposed to take the sexual assault element of it seriously, as ridiculous as that sounds. So I'm not sure I've convinced myself. It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. This is Antirad. It's the Seeker. It's the Seeker from the Rebos operation. Oh, that's a lovely little, very simple effect, but it's great fun. Maureen O'Brien is absolutely reveling in the kind of funny looks and double takes and all of that. She's great at this. That is a great set, that perspective set. It's really well done. I mean, he's such a loon. And Tigelinus is so annoying. So Brian Proudfoot, he is sad. For ages, there seemed to be no trace of him. He is dead, I think. He was a South African. I've actually found a portrait of him, a painted portrait of him that was for sale. Yes, we sadly we never got to touch base with him and find out his story. So he's a name, and we have a face because he appears in these 2 episodes. But there's not much known about the first pretend Doctor, whereas of course William Hartnell we know an awful lot about. But I do enjoy this. I mean, this is just sort of it's daft, isn't it? Maximus, go away. That is very funny. And Popea, of course, is Kay Patrick, who has directed many an episode of Coronation Street. She's a highly regarded director of Coronation Street, who took her final bow on the set with the death of the very popular character Hayley. She directed that very key episode because she's a director that was very much liked by the actors, and an actor's director. It's a phrase we know if we're Doctor Who fans that we've heard certain people described as. But she's also a favourite actress of Christopher Barry. I mean, this is there's nothing quite like this in Doctor Who. This high farce, ridiculous, and they're all playing it very well. Kay is wonderful. She lives not far from here. She has sat on the sofa I'm sitting on now. She's been here for supper. She was a good friend of Christopher Barry, who casts her again in The Savages. And in fact, she gave me her scripts from The Savages and a couple of pictures. Is that Bill Burridge in the background? Is that Mr. Oak? I'll have to look at my notes. It looks like he might be. Not Mr. Oak, Mr. Quill. Now, is this the gladiatorial arena? There's some not great sword fights in this. Good stuntman and fighter ranger though Peter Diamond was, and Doctor Who's budget really shows at the gladiatorial arena, doesn't it? So there's Dorothy Rose Gribble. She said that was the screen grab I got her to sign on that shiny photo with the metallic pen that just faded. Yeah, bless her. And I'm sure she said she'd got a pimple on her nose. She was very self-conscious about filming this episode. It's amazing the things you'd remember after 50 years. Do you remember any of your colleagues? Not really, but I remember being a bit self-conscious about my nose. That's exactly how I would be. He's got a little bit of stubble there, hasn't he? He's rather sexy, isn't he? William Russell, and the stubble becomes him. It's a great look for Ian, this hot Roman prisoner thing. And I say, this is whose legs are these? What is this? I don't remember this bit. Have I suddenly gone to a Red Hot channel? Oh no, okay. So they were direct front. Is that the closest close-up we've ever had of a man's legs, naked legs in Doctor Who? Oh dear, poor old Neo. You see, that's basically, we're going to see a man. So, he's threatening a man with a sword. And in Roman times we know that threat of death was imminent. But it's ridiculous. He's yes, there is danger in this episode of Doctor Who because it is a drama. But look, I've said my piece. Sort of top. There's quite a lot of male flesh on display in this episode. Hartnell with just a towel over his shoulders. This is like Doctor Who After Dark. It's like those episodes of Hollyoaks, which were late night. Well, I don't know if you remember that. It was late night Hollyoaks, which was like normal Hollyoaks, but with bottoms and showers. So I love the way that the Doctor sort of manipulates Nero. There's a sort of joyousness in the comedy First Doctor, who has an awful lot of fun playing the fool. He plays Nero like an instrument. Actually, he manipulates him in order to outwit him. But there's great fun to be had in all of the Doctor's intelligence. It's a pesky intelligence. And Vicky hiding under a table. I love that. There's lots of hiding under tables and beds and behind curtains. I mean, it's blatant in what it's trying to do here. It's as daft as a brush. And so yeah, Kate. Here's Kay. Kay Patrick. Oh, she's just gone again. As Popea, who had a good acting career, but then went on to be a television director. And is a lovely lady, and she's written a novel relatively recently. She's a good egg, and there's a little part of me that goes, oh, somebody from Doctor Who's been at my house, which I rather like. But she was supposed to be on the commentary. I was supposed to have met her much, much earlier, because she was supposed to be on the commentary for this. But she was run over by a unit car on the set of Coronation Street. It made the papers and everything, and she was quite badly injured. She needed, I think, a knee rebuilding and a pin put in somewhere, because a unit car rather carelessly backed into her. So we didn't have her on the commentary, which was rather I mean, obviously it was a bigger shame. She's beautiful, isn't she, as well? It's more of a shame that she got hit by a car than she wasn't on the Romans commentary. But nonetheless, I love the rapport that the Doctor and Vicky have. She's got a real enthusiasm and engagement that is rather infectious and makes you enjoy the adventure. And he's clearly having a whale of a time hooting his way through the frivolity. And Jacqueline Hill is doing what good comedy requires, which is somebody to sort of soak up all the ridiculousness, and she is playing the laughs, but she's not mugging, because you can't have everybody doing the same thing, otherwise it becomes a sort of cacophony of applause seekers. So she needs to sort of maintain a certain bit of dignity and composure. The Tigellinus stuff, they're giving because we've got the poison chalice as well. So we have the that's the other part of this episode. You've not only got the sort of farcical chasing and the people missing each other. You've got the old staple of exchanging goblets and poison, and of course the hilarity of that is that some poor wretch loses their life, and so we have a very unusual thing for Doctor Who. We have a comedy death, and I don't really like, humour that is that takes death lightly. Because I don't know, I'm obsessed with the Grim Reaper. I don't know why it is, and I like reverence. I like paying homage to people that have passed on, and to mark that occasion with dignity and with reverence. But also, I like a good joke, and a good joke is a good joke is a positive thing. Most people who are trying to make you laugh are trying to, generally laughter improves your day. Having a sense of humour about things, disarms the deadly, the dangerous, the upsetting, and sort of makes us what we are, having a sense of humour. And look, great comedy look there, Brian Proudfoot. great comedy death, great reaction, horrible reaction from Nero that he was right. So, but I love the look that Brian Proudfoot gives before he expires. It goes against all my instincts that to have a comedy death anywhere, certainly to have a comedy death in Doctor Who, and yet despite the fact it goes all against my instincts and my tastes, it's so well done that I absolutely love it to pieces. We allow things to happen. I don't know. I think I allow things. I accept things that might go against what I would normally go for, if within the context of what they're doing and in their execution they are, consistent and good. And I think that is. I think it's a lovely piece of acting from Brian Proudfoot. It's a very wittily done scene. Even though in real life I would find that to tasteless, but it's not real life. It's a silly episode of Doctor Who. Derek Francis getting to eat. I'm not sure that's not a way to eat grapes, really. I mean, I know he's showing that Nero is a glutton, but I wouldn't want to eat grapes like that. You'd get the stalks in your gob. So we've had the comedy death, which you see would be my. Now I don't know if that's going to be Josh's scene for the whole of the story, because it is a great scene, but it's a moment really more than a scene, isn't it? But it's certainly not a piece of dialogue unless he goes, "Oh, he was right." But no, because that's the dialogue is within the context. It's not the dialogue that what makes that work. It's what the dialogue is a response to. So what is the line of dialogue that Josh is after? But this recreation of Rome, it's because I studied Latin when I was younger, but I wasn't used to seeing Rome being a sort of. I don't know if you saw the mini-series Rome that it wasn't really a mini-series that was on 10, 15 years ago, which really showed that strange sort of juxtaposition between what an artistic and intelligent society Rome was and the bloody and sadistic and horrible side of it as well. And it is a fascinating culture in so many ways, that they were so advanced, such an advanced civilization, and yet one capable of such cruelty and casualness about death and all sorts of other things. Whereas I don't think when I was sort of growing up learning about the Romans I suppose we knew about the gladiators. I mean, that's an extraordinary thing, isn't it, that you would watch for entertainment. But it's not just out of context killing. It's it's like watching a live play battle scene, but actually the actors in it die. I mean, that's quite extraordinary. What a strange civilization. That happened. That was actual people. Long ago now, we can't touch or connect or anything, but it was but isn't this maybe this is the scene that he loves, the Emperor's New Lyre, where, and I mean, this speaks to so much about, I mean, it's a joke, it's just a gag about the Doctor has decided to outwit Nero by going, only the most attuned ear could pick this up, which is a clever move from our leading man. He's all right, but he's not that good. Ha ha ha! That's going to be the line, isn't it? That's going to be the line. But then, of course, because Nero is going for it, everybody else, what is it Shakespeare says, this common body like to a vagabond floundering upon the stream, goes to and forth, rotting itself with motion, and it's it's about how people are sort of very easily led and change their minds, and how malleable that we are, and how with a little bit of a sniff of somebody else's power or everybody else in the room. I've listened to some really interesting podcasts by. Is it part of the Malcolm Gladwell series? Or is it one of the other ones? But anyway, there's this podcast about things that we do wrong as groups and avoidable mistakes. And there was one about how if you're in a waiting room and smoke starts coming from under the door, if one person goes, oh, bloomin' hell, and leaves, everybody is likely to leave. But if nobody leaves, nobody leaves. And it's that we will only do a thing. And that there's this story in this podcast, which I will look up after this, about a fire that started in a famous American restaurant building. And they could smell the smoke and they could hear the burning. But because nobody said, look, this is happening, we all need to leave, everybody stayed there because the urge to not embarrass yourself and leave if it's not a fire is greater than the urge to save yourself by leaving in case there's a fire, which is extraordinary and speaks to our sort of group mentality. And of course, so I think we all understand that thing of going, the reason we laugh at those people in that scene with Nero is because also you kind of sort of go, but would you be the one to go, but I can't hear anything? Because you wouldn't want to be the one to... We don't want to be the one that stands out. And actually, there is a science behind it, and it's because if you stand out within a tribe or within an animal group or whatever, that makes you more noticeable and therefore more likely to be picked off. Whereas you actually want to, not stand out and actually be part of a group, because as a group you are stronger in the wild than as an individual. So it's all very, very complex and about emotional drivers and instincts and all of that. So look, here we've got Sev Chiria here now, who's kind of now suddenly got Nero's ear, and it means that which is why Derek Sidney has this sort of having gone from the guy that was selling the slaves, is he's now sort of organising what they do, even in the gladiatorial. Can I call it an arena? It's not really an arena, although it's not bad from that angle when you see the sort of the wings, as it were, of the arena. But the arena itself, if this were a feature film, they would be well up high, and they would be in some sort of amphitheater, wouldn't they? Whereas this is much more like his own private cinema. This is his. It's quite a rough fight, that, actually. Hang on, that they were really going at that hammer and tongs. So I think I've been unjust about the fights in the Romans when I was seeing those two gladiators practice, because that, for a studio fight, having recently seen the Time Meddler on the big screen, that battle was well done. It was at a good speed. Really well done, and that's a great cliffhanger. Next episode, Inferno, but not that one. So that that was a mixture of some quite high comedy. Loved that fight at the end. I'd forgotten how good that was. Tigellinus cupbearer Brian Proudfoot, bless him. Antirad the Seeker, I think she's only in that episode, Lacusta. But I like all the poisoner stuff. That's all quite fun. And again, it's quite bleak, isn't it? But it's let's not go into a treatise on what's except I don't know. Anyway, comedy is more complicated than we give it credit for sometimes. My feeling tends to be, though, that most people who try to make you laugh are just trying to make you laugh. And I know we live in the shadow of some very unkind comedy and very cruel comedy, and racist and sexist comedy does nobody any good, really. But I think daftness buys you some leeway. Anyway, does me. I enjoy what the Romans does. It's silly and it's farcical, and it's taking a society that could be depicted. It could be quite grim with all the death and abuse that goes on in Rome, and they managed to turn it into the House of Ray Cooney. So listen, do I try and guess Josh's favourite thing? Yes, I think his line will be, he's not that good. I think that will be Josh's line. Were I not playing by Josh's rules, because I can do this, you see, I can say I can invoke what I would have chosen had I not known it's a line. That's what I should have done last week. But anyway, it doesn't matter. My favourite bit of that episode is the death of Tigellinus, which I think is hilarious and wrong and brilliant and very well done. And God bless you, Brian Proudfoot. I wish somebody had been able to chat to you about your place in Doctor Who history. But I still hold out a hope that might be the scene that Josh chooses for his overall thing, although it might be the liar playing, and I do love that as well. I love that comedy of holding a mirror up to foolishness, and even though it's set in Rome, it feels quite British, that, doesn't it? That everybody sort of goes, oh yes, this is absolutely fine, isn't it? Yeah, because the boss says so. But maybe actually it's not. Maybe that is a human truth. Haha. I love that scene. That's very, very, very funny. I love that all the regulars, apart from William Russell, are having fun, and what William Russell is doing is being all serious and unkempt, but in a kind of sexy way. But I love what Maureen O'Brien's doing. I love what Jacqueline Hill is doing. I love what William Hartnell is doing. It looks good. Some of the sets are very nice. Yeah, the private arena, the sort of it's like he's sort of got sand in his living. He's just got a little living room that he's put some sand in out the back. He's like his conservatory, isn't it? Here's my gladiatorial conservatory. But the sword fight was really good there, so that was better than I'd remembered. Because the bit where those two guys are practicing looks a bit anemic. So I'm gonna try and play Josh at his own game and go, he's chosen the line, he's not that good, with asterisk, open brackets. But my favourite bit is the Tigellinus poisoning, although I also, with honourable mention to the farcical elements of the show, the performances of our regulars, certainly the three comic performances of our regulars, William Hartnell, Maureen O'Brien and Jacqueline Hill. And also a nod to the scene where the Doctor doesn't play a sound and everybody goes along with it, including pompous old Nero. Although I'd forgotten just how much flesh was on display. I'd forgotten actually all about that scene in the sauna, which is quite unusual. And certainly the close-up of Derek Francis's toes and leg and all up his, as I say, Nero after dark. But anyway, so I'm choosing the line, he's not that good, or whatever it was that Nero says. Let's see what wonderful Doctor Who commentator, video maker, reviewer Josh Snares says about episode 3.
For episode 3, I have once again chosen a piece of dialogue. This one is filled to the brim of great quotes, but I had to nail it down to just one specific line, and it's a line by Nero, which is, he's all right, but he's not all that good, which is during the scene where the Doctor is playing the liar, and it's so funny. It's really great to see William Hartnell going for his more comedic talents, because he had a lot of experience in comedy, and you could tell when you're watching the story as well. And my favourite stories are always the ones where he gets to be a bit more funny, such as The Gunfighters and so many more.
Yes, so hang on. Now I'm playing Josh at their own game. Suddenly things are looking up for Hadoke. And of course, in choosing that line, it does then open up, acknowledgement of other properties of the episode that are strong, like Hartnell's comic performance, and indeed the scene that contains and breeds that line. So I can see what Josh is doing here, and I'm feeling even more foolish for choosing Nero last week. Anyway, I'm you can't change the past, Toby. Well, you can if you rewrite it as a farce. Ha ha ha. So look, I'm suddenly I've gone from being whitewashed to now it's 2-1. So I could even it up next week and then go for the win with the bonus thing. So it's all to play for, and I will see if I can set alight my winning streak with an inferno next time. Well, thank you ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Josh Snares, who can be found on Twitter at Josh_Snares, but also their YouTube channel is where the action really is. I'm grateful to Josh and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include John Pettigrew, Thomas Payne, Ken Patterson, Richard Patey, Phil Pascoe, Andy Parkinson, Russell Parker, PDT, Mark Trevor Owen, Neil O, Jeremiah O'Connor, Steve O'Brien, Tom Neenan, Andrew Nixon, Paul Murphy, Chris Murphy, Sheila Moore, Ian Morgan, Justin E. Monaghan, Phil Mitchell, James Miller, Nick Mellish, Steve Manfred, Glenn MacLeod, Joe McLachlan, Philip Marsh, Darryl McLean, Kazin, Jacob Lumley, Paul Loveday, Andrew Llewellyn, Andrew Lester, Neil Little, Paul Lindblad, and Erica Lear. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Oh, this feels bad to do in times like this, but it's what we do as increasingly creative people, if that's what I am. People who try to earn a living from just talking out loud. I mean, it's a liberty, but there seems to be quite a lot of it going on at the moment, and I jumped on the bandwagon during lockdown because it was all I had was the internet and my voice, and I quite enjoyed doing it, and so I'm sort of gigging outdoors less and less and producing stuff indoors more and more, which means I have a Patreon page, which is patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where you can facilitate this outpouring of unfettered vocabulary and loviness, probably, for as little as £3 a month. I mean, what better way could you possibly spend your money in a post-pandemic societal financial collapse than giving it to a middle-class man who thinks that talking somehow should generate an income for himself when people who graft really, really hard are struggling, including those who listen to him talking, who really... I'm not doing this right, am I? Anyway, I've got a Patreon page, which for £3 a month, you get bonus material, advance releases, stuff that's just for you. You're 6 months ahead with Happy Times and Places, and you get your name read on the credits sometimes. I think I just did that quite badly, but it's not mock humility. It's a genuine uncomfortableness with doing it, and yeah, not so uncomfortable that I'm doing it, but that's because I'm not looking you in the eye as I'm doing it. There's also the Ko-fi model, because I know times are tough. There's the Ko-fi model, which if occasionally you're feeling a bit flush or you just want to buy someone a coffee, and that someone is me, where you can go to Ko-fi, which is ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke. And that's, without the monthly commitment that Patreon is. Oh, Patreon, by the way, you also get 10% off if you do a year in one go. So Ko-fi or Patreon, but what costs you nothing is to go to any of your podcast suppliers, give these 5-star reviews and a few lines of positivity. That'd be great. Now then, I think my brain failed me a couple of times during that one. It was Cautionary Tales, which is the podcast I think I mentioned in this episode. I record these outros a couple of days later, but I'm pretty sure it was in this episode I talked about a podcast that talked about, yes, it is, because it's about how the Emperor's New Clothes thing, isn't it? How we all in a group sort of, follow the crowd. And Cautionary Tales has a few stories like that, and one very interesting one about how when a ship is going very slowly forwards, instead of backing and changing direction to go out of trouble, it tries to turn, even though it knows that the speed and momentum it's going at will not stop it from crashing. But how we're programmed to keep going on the path that we're going because it seems a more efficient use of time than to sort of rip up everything we've done that's got us into this wrong position and turn round and go back and go round a different way, even though one will lead to destruction and one won't. It's almost like we don't want to waste the endeavour that has got us halfway down the wrong path. All sorts of things like that in Cautionary Tales, which is it's not Malcolm Gladwell, it's Tim Harford does Cautionary Tales, and I'm pretty sure that's the one that's got the stories that I've just told you about and that I refer to in the commentary that you've just heard. Although there is one called Revisionist History with Malcolm Gladwell that looks at some lessons we can learn from historical events that we've wrongly interpreted, and that has similar kinds of tales. So I might have mixed one up with the other. I mean, I've taken so much of them in, obviously, but it's what I listen to when I'm doing the garden or walking the dog, when I'm not listening to, either I do a lot of listening to awful people because I go, I don't live in an echo chamber, so I shall listen to some grifter being awful, because then at least I'm not sure it's healthy. It does my head in a bit, and I'm not sure it helps me. But anyway, I do a bit of that, and I listen to lots of Doctor Who podcasts as well, and I've just been recommended one that I'm certainly enjoying the cut of the jib of, called Comfort Blanket, which is sort of clever and erudite and cool people. Cool as in not what most people would think of as cool, but I think of as a really cool, really interesting actors and writers and comedians and performers. Yeah, no, damn it, they are cool. Talking about films and TV shows and things that they like. That was recommended to me, and I'm listening to that lovely actor Yusuf Kapoor talking about Die Hard, because that's what's floating my boat right now. I don't know why this post-credits has suddenly come into recommending other podcasts. Why don't you give them your money as well and just sack me off? I've never been a great networker, nor have I been a great maker of money, but secretly I kind of like that. But also secretly, I also kind of like it when people then do when I do get a nice financial support as well. So that's a bit of cognitive dissonance, is it, or hypocrisy, or double stand? I don't know what it is. Anyway, it's this. It's what this is. Anyway, so there we go. Money and podcasts. That's what this episode has been. I tell you, it's a conspiracy.